Hello and welcome back to the Pottery Studio. This is Bear Tracks Pottery, and today we're just making a set of pretty simple mugs. A lot of potters will tell you that mugs aren't really where you make your money, but it is where you kind of acquire new customers, so it's something that we all have to do. Unfortunately, I really enjoy making mugs. They're one of my favorite things. So here you see me, I've weighed out my clay and now I'm wedging it, sort of waking up the clay, getting it all plastic so that it's ready to stretch and move. It looks a lot like kneading. It's a really similar motion to kneading bread dough, or I guess any other kind of dough, even if you're not making, bread. But anyway, I'm going to wedge my clay out. We're almost done here, and then we're going to get over to the wheel as soon as we are finished. The mugs I'm going to make today, planning on making about 8 of them. The mugs we're going to make today are just going to be pretty simple cylinders. There we go. I've done a good job wedging. Going to be pretty simple cylinder shape mugs. Nothing too fancy about them. I'm using just under a pound of clay, which is just about right. They'll be probably between 8 and 10 ounces when they're finished, maybe a little more. But we're going to get stuck in here, get ourselves moving. I'm going to wet down my bat. I usually throw on bats like this because it allows me to remove the piece from the wheel really easily, really simply, without doing too much sort of warping to the form itself. I have always found that when I cut things off and try to lift them off with my fingers, that it makes things more challenging later when I start to trim the pieces after they've dried a little bit, because I've warped and changed the shape a little bit when I pick them up off the wheel. So to avoid that, I use bats like this one. I secure it to the wheel head with a nice thick disc of clay, which you can see there. And then I later will use that disc to make a plate or something similar. You can see now that I'm centering my clay, trying to smooth out all of the wobbles and imperfections. Beginners tend to find this process challenging, but once you've done it long enough, you can see that it can go pretty quickly, and even if it's not perfect, you can see a little bit of a wobble still on this one, but I'm still able to use this clay even if it's not 100% perfectly centered. Right now what I'm doing is compressing the base of this cup. As the clay dries out, if it dries out inconsistently or at different speeds, it can cause warping and cracking, and so to help avoid that, we try to compress the foot of cups like this as much as we can. I also usually add a little swirl in the foot of the cup, the base of the cup as well. And now it's time we're starting the process of pulling up the walls of the cup. One of the things I've talked about before in my shorter form content is how you're supposed to be able to do all of your pulls in 3 moves. And I think I might do 4 here. But that's just kind of a rule of thumb that I've heard before, and I don't know how important it really is. To me, you do want to work the clay quickly enough that you don't wear it out. You can exhaust the clay and then it won't stand up, it'll just collapse. But I don't know that you need a specific number of moves or not. You can see I've got a bit of a wobble here. Probably came from moving too quickly. If I had been a little more patient, I think I probably would have avoided that, but I think that by the time this piece is finished, it won't be super noticeable. I'm comfortable with that level of imperfection. Some potters won't be, and that's okay. going to get ready to cut the piece off of the wheel here. I put a little bit of a foot on it. That will help speed up the trimming process later. Cut a little indent in there and then use the wire to bring it off of the wheel. And there we are. Let's get stuck into the next one. We're going to watch this one, I think, a little bit higher speed. There we go. Speed throwing. Maximum speed. Once again, we center. Same process every time. And in fact, I'll probably stop the commentary before much longer. Only pop in when things get interesting. There we go. That was 3 moves. I'm smoothing it out. Rolling up and compressing the rim of the cup as well. And now we're ready to cut it off. I've always found the pattern of slip running away from the middle of the wheel there. You can see it here. Always found that to be kind of fascinating to look at. I'm a little maddeningly inconsistent when I'm throwing. Sometimes I'll cone the clay up like that you just saw as I center. Sometimes I don't bother. I suppose there are other potters who would perhaps insist that it's important to do the same thing every time, and they might be right, honestly. Sometimes I struggle with consistency in my work. Ooh, here we go. Speaking of struggling, looks like I didn't stick this bat firmly enough to the wheel head, to this to my disc of clay here. And now I've watched a lot of a guy called Tortoise on Instagram, and this individual is just incredible with the sort of acrobatics that he can achieve with clay. And so I got it into my head that maybe I could do the same. So I'm going to try and recenter the clay here like this while it's still spinning after I've already opened it. And you can see that I don't have a perfect result here. It doesn't quite work, but it definitely could be worse. I was a little surprised at how well I was able to recenter it with the knowledge that, of course, I did not do a perfect job. You can see the wobble that is there as a result of the bat coming off and me needing to then try and recenter the clay while it's already been opened up. Yeah, and that wobble gets pretty bad here. But I'm going to try and smooth things out with my wooden rib. The wooden rib, by the way, is one of my favorite tools. Different potters will have sort of different affinities for different tools in their kits. And for me, this little rib, I just love this thing. It's one of those ribs you get in like any beginner potter toolkit. And I don't know, for me, it's just I love using it. I know some people really love their metal ribs or their plastic sort of mud tools ribs, but none of those has ever stood out to me as good for my hands as this little simple wooden rib. And there we go. I think I did a pretty good job of bringing this back to center, considering the level of catastrophe that took place. And once this is finished, I doubt it'll be noticeable at all, except to a very well-trained eye, that it experienced any problems whatsoever. Oh, and a mistake has been made once again there. You saw it briefly. I was drying out the surface of the clay a little bit too much, and it actually caught on my rib. The one that I was just praising so profusely, and it pulled it away, but I was able to save that one as well. I was able to bring it back, even though the clay had gotten a little stretched out. I was pretty happy with it in the end. Got to give the clay a little bit of a love pat, just to let it know that it's appreciated. If you ever look inside one of my mugs, you will see that little swirl that I leave in the floor of the cup. And I do that because a teacher of mine, one of the men who taught me how to make pottery and ceramic vessels in the first place, sort of told an apocryphal story. I don't know how true it really is, but it sounds good, so I'm willing to believe in it. Is that in Japan, the way that you would make a teacup, you would brew your tea right there in the cup. And at the time, they didn't have the technology to make wire tea strainers. And so you would put your tea leaves directly into your cup, and there would be a deep sort of swirl at the bottom of the cup, and that would catch the tea leaves in the bottom of the cup. So you could drink the tea, and the tea leaves wouldn't get into your mouth, which, if you are a tea drinker, you know that it's not super pleasant to get tea leaves into your mouth. At least, I don't find it particularly pleasant myself. Maybe there are those watching this who think that's crazy. But I leave a little swirl in the bottom of my cups as an homage to that story. This cup picked up a bit of a wobble, as you can see here. It happens. I tend to keep cups that have this much wobble, as you've already noticed today. And like I said, some potters would throw this out. And I can't say that they're wrong. It's just, I don't. For me, I think I like that gentle motion of the rim of the cup. It doesn't bother me. I like the waviness of it. It kind of speaks to me. And I can understand the perspective of people who would say that it's an imperfection and that it should just be tossed and you can re-wedge that clay and make something else, try again and do better. And again, yeah, I can understand that perspective. But I don't hold to it. This one's already fighting me. Can see little bits of wobble, and here it goes. Oh, a big catch. The clay catches on the rib and pulls over and stretches, and boy, it's ugly. Unfortunate little moment there. So once again, I felt successful enough on that first attempt at clay acrobatics in the style of Tortoise on Instagram that I thought to myself, oh, maybe I can do it again. And this time it did not go well. Not successful, as you're about to see. I'm going to keep trying. I'm going to try to recenter. There's just too much air trapped in there. It's just not going to work out. At this point, I'm feeling okay about it. I'm feeling like, it's not perfectly centered, but it's kind of all right. And then I try pushing on it some more, and I just feel these air bubbles in there. If you've ever worked with clay on a wheel, you probably are familiar with that sensation of feeling the air bubbles below the surface of the clay. And I think to myself, well, I'll try opening it anyway. And it's just not working. You can actually, I think, see the little vibrations caused by those air bubbles. And at about this point, I'm thinking that this isn't going to work out. I keep trying for a few more moments, but in the end, I'm going to give up on this one and put it on the wedging table and leave it to start over. And I did recycle this clay, and I did re-wedge it, and I did make something else with it, but as you can see, this is not the time that it worked out. Man, I put more effort into this than I remembered. I did not give up right away. I probably should have stopped sooner. But nothing I could do would chase those bubbles out. I could feel them in the clay walls. I wasn't getting the stretch of the clay that I wanted, and it just too much instability, too off-center. Yeah, you can really see it wobbling there. So, the time has come. We give it up. We start over. You can reuse the clay. It's all good. We'll try again. As my ceramics teachers always used to say, just make some more of them. And that's what I did. You may have noticed that occasionally we get those sort of undulations once I get the walls of the cup pulled up a ways, and that tends to happen because I've pulled the clay thin enough that it's not as strong, and so as the walls get thinner and weaker, they also stretch more as I put pressure on them from higher up. I'm usually able to smooth that out nicely with the wooden rib. I have wondered if there would be a way to sort of capture that look of those undulating sides starting to fold together. And that's something I may experiment with someday. I'm sure it's been done before. I know that I'm by far not the first potter to have experienced that. But it's something I've never done personally. And therefore, I'm a little curious about it. All right, that was the last cup. And here's the one that I had to take apart. I put it on my canvas board, and it's just not going to work out. So we're going to let it dry a little bit longer, and I'll come back to it another day.